religions. I studied Buddhism, I studied Hinduism, I read the scriptures, I read Christianity, I read Bible, and looked at other religions, of course, also Baha'ism, which was an attempt to bring all religions together and to look and talk about peace. And Akbar's Deen-e-Ilahi, a part of in the subcontinent, and Sikhism. And that was a search for self. It was a search for answers. Why am I here? What is the world all about? What happens? What happens after death? That's the search still continues. In fact, it never ends, And the more I see, the more I understand that man is totally ignorant. And man is a combination of all these things, his desires, and the shortness of life itself brings a different perspective on things, We can have a concept of the hereafter and try and do good. You can have a concept of doing good even here, trying to live in humanity with other people. Humanism by itself becomes a religion later on. When you talk about interfaith harmony. But at the same time, if you look at the world is full of wars, the world is full of hegemonious attitudes. What is mine will not allow it to be shared. And that is where Buddhism was of extreme importance to me. So therefore, part of my tourism and part of my wife's tourism, Samina Alvi's tourism, had involved these trips to Sri Lanka, for example, to Thailand. And we were fascinated by the temple of the Holy Tooth in Kandy, where Buddha's tooth has been preserved. And we knew less about Pakistan's archaeological sites then. And we traveled to Thailand to look at the stupas and to understand the practice of prayer and to see the people praying there in different forms, Then, interestingly, we decided to go to Tibet. And we reached there. It was a funny, very strange thing which happened. We had a little viral flu when we went into Tibet. And we didn't realize what was happening. As soon as we went to the hotel and our rooms were on the first floor, both of us got tired. And we thought that this must be the virus which we brought from Islam. I think we flew from Islamabad. We have brought this virus from Islamabad. So we rested one day. And the next day we went into the bazaar and again we were tired, so we tried and rested another half a day. But then we thought that we are here only for 4 days, and if we just give it up to all this weakness in the human body, it will not serve us well. So we went out. We went to the Potala Palace, and then we realized, and when we saw there were these honeymooning couples who would, after marriage, would come to the Potala Palace, and all of them, and which is now very common in Pakistan also. You can understand the fact that all of them had these small cans with a tube going into the nose because oxygen was scarce at that height. Which can happen if you go to the Kaga, to the Khunjra Pass and elsewhere. And then we realized that it was not our weakness or the virus, it was just lack of oxygen. So it was a very interesting trip even to Potala for the smell of the yak oil which is burnt as a holy ceremony throughout the stairs you climb and all over. And tremendous art resting there, tremendous valuables. So my link to Buddhism is therefore related to that. And the more I read about archaeological sites in Pakistan, I am impressed by the fact, and I have heard people claim, and I am sure, Adnan, you had claimed that there are more Buddhist artifacts in Pakistan than anywhere in the world. I said, that is very interesting. That is very interesting. And the fact that the spread of Buddhism towards Korea, towards Japan, and to many other regions started from the north, from the Swat Valley, from the Hunza Valley. And these monks traveled, and there's some monks even in the current age who travel the same route, just in memory of the monks who preached Buddhism, and they went from Pakistan to Korea. And Pakistan has welcomed over the last few years delegation of venerable monks from Korea, from Thailand, from Sri Lanka, and I think that kind of interaction will help us preserve whatever we have and help us preserve and bring people together. Because today in the world, we do talk about, and we've talked about interfaith harmony for a very long time. But the history of mankind, if you look back, and I was speaking today in the morning on peace and humane war, and I believe that man is stuck with his own psyche. Man has always fought man from the time of Hazrat Adam's children. It took one generation to start what the DNA in our minds is made up of. It includes love, it includes phobias, it includes hate. And I find very frequently that even, and I had people raise their arms to one question of mine, but I'll come to that later. In these times, we are a mixture of all that. So therefore, exploitation is in our fabric. Love and hate is in our fabric. We like something beautiful, like a child here with innocent expressions, and we all love that. So we have love, and we also have hatred, and we have phobias. So it is very difficult, and therefore the Buddhist struggle, which I imbibed, was the fact that you can never be satisfied as long you have desires. You see, a very important pillar of Buddhism, which I said, my relationship to Buddhism is more than archaeological sites and tourism. My relationship is personal. So many other religions talk about it, and Buddhism also has addressed that. That as long as you have desires, you will not have peace. You will not find peace, because desires never end. And I've seen it in my life. My desires never end. And every person comes through that, If you climb this stair, you will have a desire to go higher. If you get this job, you will have a desire to go higher. If you have this income, you will have a desire to go higher. If you have this much power, you will have a desire to go higher. That in a lot of minds creates stress. Why do I say in a lot of minds? Because some people may still find happiness in that. So therefore, there was a shift in a number of religions towards monasticism, towards asceticism, giving up things, pleasures of life. And a lot of religions imbibe that, the fact that you fast and you give up one desire, and not only you give up one desire, you make your body and your mind understand the spirituality even of food. That if it is prevented from you, how do you feel? So Buddha himself practiced that, and he was, and all the images of the fasting Buddha talk about that. That was his search about what the body needs, what does the mind need. Can you give up things in life and still be happy? So that struggle is on with all of you, with me also. And I am surprised by what I find in people. People who acquire wealth, and I have acquired wealth also, so I am not denigrating that. People who acquire wealth, and they keep on doing that. They never stop. It's an endless thing which doesn't stop. And the richer they are, the hungrier they are. They never stop. And somebody tells me, chalo, iske paas to bahut daulat aa gayi, chalo, ab isko chain pad jayega. It doesn't. In fact, it is, I don't know, in fact, it is an addiction. If I were a doctor, for example, if I were a doctor, and somebody would come and tell me and complain about somebody and say he started eating breakfast in the morning, and this is lunchtime and he's still eating. Or somebody who started eating at lunch and this is dinner time and is still eating. The doctor will say the person is sick. You see, his body doesn't need all that. So where does somebody draw a line? His body doesn't need all that. So if people acquire wealth and keep on acquiring wealth until they go down under, that is the kind of thing which Buddhism and Buddha preached more. So you curb your desires. Islam says the same thing, curb your desires. And if you curb your desires, then you may see other things in life. Humanity, love for people, understanding people, forgiveness. We are missing that. So we are a combination of emotions. And Buddhism has understood emotion very well. And the nirvana which is talked about is the fact that when you give up your desires, then you give up your desires, stress goes out of your family, reject what your body desires, bring it as a routine, something which you don't have to desire. It's just a part. Like air, you keep on breathing air. It's a part of routine. It goes in the background. There's no search for air except when you're suffering from COVID. Then you understand the value of simple air. Imagine, and the world has learned that. But have we? We have learned that as a disease. We have not learned that as something which is a luxury and brings you back to humanity. So ladies and gentlemen, it is a very intriguing journey of my life. And that journey continues as long as I am alive. That journey continues, and Buddhism therefore is a very major part of it. And Pakistan has had, you see, the history of the Indus Valley civilization is anchored in Buddhism, is anchored in Hinduism, and a peaceful transition between Hinduism and Buddhism also. Mohenjo-daro, for example, both peaceful transition, and Buddhism gave way to Hinduism in some areas, and it was spread to Afghanistan, and therefore the Bamiyan Buddha site. So this region was also at one time full of Buddhism, and we would like to preserve what we have. Very important. It's a huge struggle always to preserve what we have, to try and restore some of the damage, at the same time not restore all the damage, to give the implication, to give the feeling to people that this is ancient history, to preserve some of the damage, and to understand these huge civilizations which existed. If you go to Mohenjo-daro, for example, you will be surprised by the fact that 5,000 years ago, 7,000 years ago, there was a grid-like city, Mohenjo-daro. It was based on a grid. It was the houses were on the grid. There was no kachi abadi. There was no transgression on the thoroughfare. The water came from the Indus, went into every house, and the sewage went out in a very planned manner. 5,000 years ago. Imagine. And it gave way. It vanished. Why did it vanish? Only because the dependency of mankind with water was so important that as the river changed its course, the civilization moved away. Civilizations throughout history have been close to water, whether it's the Nile, whether it's the Euphrates, or whether it's the Danube, whether it's the Amazon, and whether it was the Indus Valley civilization. It was our heritage, it is our heritage. And today Pakistan is well placed to talk about peace, because what we see more than ever before, there is polarization between people. More than ever before, this religious anchorage towards peace and understanding of each other. We need an anchorage to give up wars, not to have humanitarian wars, not to have wars at all. It creates misery. And who is most affected? The woman and the children. Wars have always created misery. Tens of millions have died in the last century. Tens of millions have died. And still, we still keep on. We have learned something else, that we don't want to stop wars, but we don't want peace either. We just want to have humanitarian wars. We won't solve the Kashmir issue, but we won't have a full-blown fight on it. So that's the kind of mentality which is progressing in the world. And I believe that going back to peaceful traditions is very important, not for you alone. I asked a question in the morning to the people, because I want you to understand this conflict in the human mind. And I asked a question and asked people to raise their hands. And I'll also ask you here. How many of you get angry? Imagine. The problem is here. We have to manage that. And that by itself is my question for your own reflection. Because anger is against a person. Anger is frustration. Anger leads to reflexes. And I quoted something else also. Those who get angry frequently, like my late father, Allah Ta'ala maghfirat kare, like my late father, he would tell me, and Samina is a good witness, he would tell me that when I get angry, I never say anything bad to anybody, and my anger is in my control, and I knew it was not. So ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here and to talk about peace. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
ڈاکٹر عارف علوی اسلام آباد میں بین الاقوامی